It's actually a good topic of conversation because this is a all on full for full arch, where the implants were placed in the two in the anterior, 7 and 10, and the other two looks like in the distal of the first bicuspids. That was the provisional design, and this was the final design, where instead of having one bicuspid, there was actually an extra first molar placed on. So now there's a two-ponic cantilever distal on both sides, and it looks like the distal-most implant on both sides was potentially an angled multi-unit abutment. That's what I'm thinking. So the implant was placed in the first molar with the angulation of the screw channel coming out the distal of the first premolar and two ponics cantilevered out. Another thing to note is this screw is a 1.2 millimeter height. So there's 1.2 millimeters of zirconia underneath this screw head, and then you have the screw head itself. You can see how the thickness of zirconia is in this situation, where there's not a lot of thickness, maybe a millimeter in this spot right here, maybe 2 millimeters in this spot right here, which causes a potential for this zirconia to fracture if there was load bearing. In this site, maybe 1 millimeter on both sides if this is in function, and honestly it looks like it is in function. I'm not sure why it is or would be, because usually you don't load the anterior teeth, but it does look like it's in function, or it's an occlusion of some sorts. And then in this anterior area, 2 millimeters, 1 millimeter, and then further towards the back, actually this is enough zirconia back here. But then you get into this two-ponic cantilever distal, and I mean, you know that there's 800 times the forces on a multi-unit abutment whenever you put a single ponic off, or maybe it's two ponics, I can't really remember. I read in Dan Holtz's book not that long ago. But this two-ponic cantilever, if you're functioning on this molar, you're loading this, which is loading this, which is loading this screw. This screw cannot take the forces from two-ponic cantilever. So if the necessity is to keep the person in a first molar occlusion, then you would either do one of two things: add another implant towards the back on both sides to decrease the ponic effect or decrease the cantilever effect, or option two would be to, instead of using a second bicuspid, use this as a first molar. So the second premolar would become a first molar, so that it would come out to about right here and not have such a long cantilever effect. That would decrease the loading off of this implant. I would also think about, I mean, just, I don't know, you don't want to redesign or rethink this, but it's just a good case to kind of take a look at. But another thing I was thinking about is, you see how far out he's coming out, how much overjet? I'm wondering if his vertical dimension of occlusion is correct. I'm willing to bet it's not, but even so, even if it is correct, then he's an FP1 case. But in this case, it looks like there's pink tissue. So there's a lot of different factors that are influencing this case that we could look at and kind of talk about. But let's say his vertical dimensions of occlusion, let's just say it is collapsing. We could open him up. Well, if you did that, if you opened up his bite, that'd give you the potential to be able to tuck in the maxillary anterior teeth more and have less overjet. Also, it would, but it would want to tuck in the teeth back. So then instead of coming out the distal first bicuspid, it would just come out the first bicuspid. So you really only need to come out just one molar on both sides. Interesting case, but all on four, typically on an all on four situation, the implants in the distalmost part are coming out the second bicuspid here, so you can cantilever off one molar. Typically it's not the first bicuspid. So again, this is the first bicuspid. Typically the implant would be coming out the second bicuspid, and you can cantilever off one molar on both sides. If he's not a candidate for, let's say he is a candidate for an FP1, all right, and then you have these multi-unit abutments that you're working with. Then I would shorten the height of the multi-unit abutments. Give this short, either go 1.5 or 2 millimeter multi-unit abutment, so you can get a little bit more space here to thicken up the zirconia. Because right now, like I said, you're so close to these edges of the adjacent teeth. If your multi-unit abutment height is up here, that drops the screw hole and provides you more zirconia underneath this. So I hope all this works. I'd love to hear some comments and feedback from others. All right.